Hello, everyone. My name is Lucas Hall from Landlordology and Cozy. This is a webinar that I'm really excited to present tonight. It is called How to Ensure a Flawless Move In and Move Out. And this is all about that turnover period and how to reduce vacancy as much as possible and down to almost zero if you can, if you work hard enough. But I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to make it really easy, and it'll just be on autopilot. So hopefully I can teach you something, and hopefully you'll teach me something through the question and answer. And I just love getting to know people. We have a lot of people already on the webinar, and it looks like people are rolling in uh, right and left. So I'm upwards of expecting over 100 people probably tonight. So if you have a question, go ahead and leave it in that questions box in your control panel, and I'll get to it as we roll along. Oh, wow. I see a lot of people that I know through Landlordology. Thank you guys. Bo, Chad, Henry. Yes, thank you guys for coming. Okay, let's get rolling. First and foremost, I call it a flawless move in, move out. And I call it flawless because I think of a diamond and I think it's just clean, pristine, easy, and desirable. And what we're talking about is how to get Sarah P, from moving out of the house or the apartment over to Mark, who's moving in. And how do you do that with still making repairs, cleaning up the place, getting it so that Mark is going to love it and he would never know that Sarah was there and may or may not have been a slob? And how do you get it so that you don't have any vacancy whatsoever? I think vacancy period is the number one killer of revenue with rentals. And so that's the ultimate goal. Yeah, sure, you want to upkeep your place during the transition, but you definitely want no vacancy. So that's what this is about. I can say with pride that out of 10 years of managing rentals, hundreds of tenants, I've only had 1 month of vacancy, and that was actually just about a year and a half ago. And I was heartbroken that my batting average, my perfect batting average, was ruined because I just couldn't avoid it. I couldn't find a tenant fast enough. So it does happen, but I still think that's a pretty awesome record. And this is the technique that I use to handle that. So who am I? Who am I, and why are you here? Why are you listening to me? I am a project management professional. I got that certification. It's a real certification. It doesn't stand for pimp, but it just means that I am able to get projects done on time and on budget, and I'm able to accomplish things, and people can rely on me for that. So there's actually an industry, and it's a certification by PMI. But while I worked as a consultant with this certification for a number of years, almost 12 years now, I think, I started building up a portfolio of properties. And so I've been a landlord for 10 years. I have 5 properties currently in 3 different states and about 17 or 18 tenants at any given time. I am the founder of Landlordology, and that's probably how you have come to meet me. That is a really popular website. It gets close to 2.4 million people visiting it every year, and I love it. Like I talk about landlording all the time. I meet new people, and we discuss how to be better, more profitable, more ethical, and just we're in it together. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm giving these free webinars. But I'm also the chief landlordologist at Cozy. So a lot of people know what Cozy is, and it's a software company that makes property management software. It's also free. Cozy got their initial seed money from Google, and Google said, "We love what you're doing. We want you to go conquer the world and change the rental industry for the better." And we said, "Great." So Landlordology was acquired by Cozy a number of years ago, and I've been working with them ever since, just trying to improve the rental industry. So that's what we do. I'll talk more about Cozy later because it is an instrumental part of my business, and I encourage you to give it a try. Also, I'm a family man. I have a daughter and a wife, and a 90-pound golden doodle. So I love him so much. He's my firstborn. So I'm a dog guy. But last and not least, I am not an attorney. So I will say things in this webinar that may sound like legal advice, but please don't take it like legal advice. It's just stating research that I've done. It may or may not apply to your situation. So I do believe that every good property manager should have a lawyer that they can talk to when situations arise. So don't rely on me for legal advice, but I'm here to teach you best practices. This is Landlordology. This is where this is the site that I built. and it has just an amazing plethora of articles and state laws and tools and resources that you can use to make your business better and more profitable. So we like to say we have the best tools and resources for independent landlords. It's also for property managers as well. Anybody who's trying to manage properties, it works well. Go check it out. It's landlordology.com. You'll find just a ton of information there, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it. Cozy, who owns Landlordology, we're part of that group. Landlordology is the content division of Cozy, but Cozy makes some pretty awesome software. It's all web based. It's completely free. You can do a variety of things, but as this picture shows, you not only can access that through any computer, any laptop, but also on your mobile phone. So you can completely manage your properties from your cell phone. It's pretty neat. And what Cozy does, and what makes it so powerful, is it handles the 4 major areas of property management. Now, there's lots of stuff that goes into property management, but this in particular, there's 4 areas that are really, you really have to nail. You have to do it right. 1 is rent collection. 2, online rental applications, credit reports, and background checks. Now, online rent collection, it's literally as easy as it sounds. The tenant transfers money from their account to your account, and it's done. Rent's paid, and it's all tracked in a beautiful ledger. Online rental applications and listings will help you market your property and collect those applications easily, like within seconds. It's instant. As soon as the person fills it out, there's no mishaps, there's no mistakes. It's just there, and it'll help you sort through the data, so you'll know their income requirements and you'll know who to call for past landlords. It's just a really easy way of collecting applications. I haven't actually asked for a paper application in about 5 years, and I love it. With those applications, you can also collect background checks and credit reports. Those are an amazing way to verify the identity of somebody, as well as how much debt or any criminal or eviction history that they have. I think that's critical for tenant screening, which tenant screening is a whole nother webinar, but that is available if you want to learn more about that. So the beauty of Cozy is that all of that is built in, and it's all completely free for managers and landlords. So you can find a tenant, screen them, start collecting rent, and then when they move out, start over again. That's it. It's from move in to move out, and I love it. The background checks and the credit reports are actually how Cozy makes their money, but the landlord does not pay for that. The tenant does. So it's about $19.95 per report for the tenant to issue or authorize those, and we make about $9 on each report. So that's where our revenue comes from, and that's how we're able to give away rent collection. There's no transaction fees, there's no monthly fees. It's truly free no matter how many units you have. So check it out. It's cozy.co. Now, the meat and potatoes. This is what we're talking about. This is move in, move out, how to have a flawless move in, move out. Now, before we get started, I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this chart. This chart is just a high level, I will say high level, but it is a high level process of the move in, move out transition, that turnover period. And so what I want to point out is we're going to walk through each one of these steps, and I'm going to tell you some tips and tricks about each one of these steps. And it's a lot easier than it looks on this. So on the left-hand side of that dotted line on the screen, there is, that's all the stuff you have to do with an outgoing resident, somebody who's moving out. Now, everything on the right-hand side, that's what you have to do with an incoming resident. And the real challenge of a successful, flawless turnover that doesn't have any vacancy is doing this at the same time. You're dealing with the old tenant as well as you're dealing with the new tenant, all at the same time, to make sure that everything happens perfectly. So without further ado, let's get started. The first step is to notify the outgoing resident of either a renewal or a move out. What's going to happen. Their lease is ending soon, and you need to figure out if they're going to leave or they're going to stay. So let's see. What I suggest, and what has always worked well for me, is that you require in your lease that they must give you 60 days notice of non-renewal. Now, I never make my leases automatically renew because I don't want to be pigeonholed into that. I want the option to terminate that lease or let it expire when it gets to the end, just in case something isn't working out with that tenant. but I do require that it's like, hey, if you aren't going to renew, you need to let me know that 60 days in advance. And I always say 60 days from the end of the lease. Sometimes people even say 60 days from the day rent is due, which is not always the same day, but definitely 60 days. And what I like about 60 days is it gives you just enough cushion to really work hard to find somebody within that 30 to 60 day window. And then that last 30 days, you can kind of focus on, getting the lease signed or working on the tenant who's moving out. If you have somebody like a good tenant that you don't want to leave necessarily, and you do want to offer them a renewal, I don't suggest that you raise the rent. I know that there are diehard property managers out there who say always raise the rent. You always have to do it. It's always 3% or whatever. And I think that is a huge bargaining chip that you're giving up. I think that you can get great tenants to stay and take care of the place if you don't raise the rent. Now, most of my leases are anywhere from 1 to 3 years. That's just kind of how long those tenants stay. So those tenants are going to move out. I've never had someone stay for 10 years. It just doesn't happen in my area. And I price my rentals such that they are on the top. I try to price them as high as I can and as high as I can get away with. I do want to maximize that rent. So occasionally they'll just find someone that's cheaper, or stuff happens. So don't raise the rent. What I do instead to make up that money is I will raise the rent, that difference when that person finally moves out. So even though I didn't raise it 3% every year, but he only stayed for 2 years, when that person finally leaves, I'll just raise the rent 10% when the next, on the next tenant who's brand new, doesn't know any better, and that's just the price. So that's how I make it up. And it also gives me the ability to keep a good tenant, because that good tenant is worth more than 3% in a rent increase. Number 3, provide instructions and a cleaning list. So if you do have somebody who is leaving, or you just want to do an inspection during renewal time, definitely send them exactly what you want them to do. It takes a little bit of time to write that up, but it's so worth it, because it's hard and it's almost unfair to tell a tenant, hey, listen, you need to clean, but I'm not going to tell you what the guidelines are, or I'm not going to tell you what I expect you to do. That's just not fair for anybody. So I've had tenants who actually thank me because I give them the rule book that they're going to be graded on. And I think that's critical. So as a bonus, I have a treat for you guys, for everyone here. If you look down on your GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side, you'll see something called handouts, 5 of 5. Now, if you open that up or expand it, you'll see 5 files. And I should have mentioned this earlier, so I apologize. But included in one of those files, one of the Word docs, is actually something called a Move Out Cleaning Procedures 2015 doc. And what that is my template. So feel free to take it, customize it, use it. It's in a Word doc so that you can chop it up and use it apart. I just ask you that you don't take it and sell it because it is ours and I'm giving it to you for free. So just use it and have fun with it, make it your own, and I hope it helps. So that's how I tell my tenants what they need to clean, and that's usually the rule book that I go by. Now, it's different from a move-in, move-out inspection sheet. That is very different. That is where the tenant and you go through and you mark damages, and that's what you compare to when they move out. But this is a cleaning list. There's also other things in there. So if this webinar goes blank or gets cut off or something, I do have the slide deck in there for you. And then there's also a flyer for Cozy, as well as a welcome letter. So check that out as well. Download them, have fun with them. If you're having trouble downloading, try a right click and save as if you're on a PC. Okay, I see some questions coming in already. Thank you guys. All right, so that's deciding if someone's going to move in or move out, or renew or move out, and then how to handle that. The next step, once you decide, let's say the person says he's going to move out, is to actually start listing the property. They're going to move out, you know it, and you have to get the place ready for the next person, and you have to start marketing it. So that's where we're at now. So you're marketing to an incoming resident. You've gotten word 60 days out that your old tenant is going to leave, and that's fine. So this is how you handle it. What I suggest is start the showings 4 to 6 weeks out at least. Now, I don't necessarily recommend doing 8 weeks out, and that's just for whatever reason. My experience has been At 8 weeks, you get a lot of tire kickers, but at 6 weeks, you start to get people who are serious. So I try not to show things around 8 weeks, but I certainly will advertise and try to set up some showings for 2 weeks or something. I won't say that's not to say I won't show it to somebody if they really need to see it or really want to. I just think that's the best window for showings. Next, where I advertise on a few places. Craigslist in my area is still number one. I still think it produces a good amount of my showings, almost the majority of them. So I continue to advertise there, and I repost every 3 days or so, depending on how busy that feed is. But there's also a site called Postlets, and a lot of you are already familiar with that. But Postlets, it's postlets.com. They will create like a listing for you and syndicate that to lots of different sites. That's great because then you can get on Trulia or Zillow or a variety of other ones and kind of hit 10 birds with one stone. And the best part is if you need to lower your price, you can just lower it there and it will lower it all the other places. So it'll take changes. Also, Cozy just recently released a listings capability. So now, whatever properties you have in Cozy that you're showing, you can actually create this beautiful web page. So it's a web page of your own, and the online application is built right into it. You have a ton of pictures, and you can have all the details and all amenities about it. So that's actually how I get applications. So I will syndicate to Craigslist and through Postlets, and then I'll put a little URL in there. I'll send all those viewers to the Cozy page, and they can look at more pictures or more details, and then apply right there. So that's how I market. Pictures, oh pretty. That is a phrase that I like to convey the emotion that you're trying to get out of a tenant. So if you don't have pictures or you have bad pictures with bad lighting, you are shooting yourself in the foot. I know it sounds very elementary, but it's so true. And you wouldn't believe how many people just think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I find a lot of landlords who have been doing it for 30 and 40 years sometimes are still in the mentality of the newspaper listing where it's just like 20 words and it's abbreviated and everything's short, because that's how they used to do it with newspapers, and there were no pictures at all. Or some of the pictures are 30 years old. So definitely get accurate pictures. I like to use borrow somebody's really good camera, but nowadays a lot of cell phones will take really great pictures. There's also a company called Circle Pix. It's circlepix.com, which I've used. I don't have any affiliation with them, but they're just a great company. I think they're national, and you can call them up and they'll come take beautiful pictures, even host them for you, and even take some of those 360-degree pictures. So that's pretty neat, right? I can't do that on my own. At least I don't think I can. And then last, do a landlord's open house. Now, I know I got some questions before the show about how do I do appointments and open houses. What this is basically where you, let's say, start listing on a Monday, and you start getting inquiries throughout the week, and you're setting up showings for one day between, for like 3 hours, between the hours of 1 and 4, let's say. And it's not a real open house because you just don't want people randomly walking through that just kind of came off the street, but you want to set up these appointments, and you set them up back to back, like for 30-minute intervals, and at 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, 2:30, and just tell your current tenants, hey, listen, I've got 6 people coming by between 1 and 3. So I'd really appreciate it if you could just go catch a movie or go get a late lunch or something, and that way I'll have the place to myself. I will monitor everybody that comes through, and I will show them. I'll walk them around and give them a tour. And the best part is, if I get something rented today because of all these showings, then I don't have to be in your hair next week. So they usually like that, and they're really usually okay with just disappearing on a Saturday afternoon because they were probably going to be out and about anyway. So I like doing that. And the best part about a landlord's open house is the tenants that do show up for their appointments are usually cross paths with the people who are leaving or coming, and as they come and go, and it creates this buzz that really entices them to ask questions like, hey, how many other deposits do you have, or do you have any other applications, or when do you think it'll go? So I think all that stuff's really important, and the more buzz you can create about it, the better. So that's what I like to do, and it doesn't waste my time. So instead of going to a property every single night, at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock for another showing. I just line them all up on a Saturday and bump them out. It's worked so well for me. I've actually had 3 deposit checks and upwards of 40 people coming through. It's a big house. It's a group house of about 6 people can live there. So I've had 8 groups come through in a Saturday and 3 deposit checks out of it. So it works. So give that a try. You'll save a lot of time. Next, oops, how did I do that? Okay, next, once you find somebody who loves the house and they say, I really want to live here, what do I need to do? You say, oh, great, fill out an application. It's easy, right? And a lot of times, the traditional way is just say, here, sit down at the table. I've got the application right here, fill it out. But the problem I've found with doing that is a lot of times they don't necessarily know all of the information right off the top of their head. Yeah, they can guess, but they sometimes don't know everything. They don't know the phone numbers of their last landlords, and it's just weird. So they often say, can I take it home? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So what I started doing about 5 years ago was collecting online applications, and I found that is just incredibly easy. Not only do I get applications from people who have never seen the place before, they just see the pictures because I've got great pictures and they want to apply, but the tenants that do show up and they're really interested in it, they can literally either stay there at the house with me and fill out the application on my computer or their tablet or even their cell phone, or they can just go back to their car, call their other roommates or family members and discuss it with them and then fill it out right then and there. So when I started using online applications, believe it or not, I actually got the applications quicker than if I hovered over their shoulder and watched them fill out some sort of paper application. So again, number one, use online applications. You can get them for free at Cozy. It's just a really great way to do it. And I think that it's really critical that you accept applications from all adults that might be living in your place. So, or I should say this, no, all adults on the lease. So that includes co-signers who may or may not be living in there. It is critical that you know who is living there. I never really worry about minors. So if it's a child under the age, whatever the legal age is for your state, but if they're over the legal age, make sure you get that application. Make sure that you do a credit report and background check on them as well, because you need to know who's living there. And 3, this is a debatable topic. It is, you can actually accept the first, or you don't have to accept the first qualified applicant, but it is recommended. However, it's not law. So there is there's a web URL there that you can go to and read more about it. But basically, long story short, I kept hearing from people that you have to accept the first qualified applicant. Now, I agree that it's certainly the most fair way to go, but it may not be in your interest. So you may have someone apply, let's just say 2 minutes later, the application comes in 2 minutes later, and you don't have any money from any of them, let's say at that point. But that application that comes in 2 minutes later, that person is like way qualified, and the one who went in first is just barely qualified. You actually can select that second tenant, second applicant, just because he's a better, more qualified applicant. There is a thing in the California handbook about fair housing that says that you have to accept the first qualified applicant. And so I was looking at it. It didn't have a statute next to it like it did on all the other things in the document. And I called up the office, the fair housing office in California, and I said, what's the statute for this? Like, show me, you did such a great job in the rest of the book, but you left it out here. And they said, hold on, please. And then the next thing I know, I was talking to the office attorney, who basically told me, we just think it's a great idea. It's not law, but it is, a great idea. And I said, I completely agree with you, but you need to stop marketing it as if it is law, because it's not in any statutes. So if I'm incorrect and you have a statute or a city law that says otherwise, please, shoot me an email, because I love learning more about it. And city laws and, local municipalities might have their own laws against that. So check it out. It is certainly worth knowing the answer to that one. Next, we are going to review and hopefully approve an applicant. So after you have an application come through, then you need to decide if this candidate is going to be good. So hopefully you'll have more than one applicant, but if you don't, you still need to review them. So biggest thing about screening, and I say this over and over again, it is critical that a few things, but you need to know where the red flags are. You need to know what your criteria are going to be, and how to gauge what a good tenant is. There's a whole nother webinar that I have on that. And actually, if anybody is familiar with the Landlordology guides, here's an example. This is the Landlord's Guide to Tenant Screening. You can get this for free on Landlordology. It's pretty thick and decent. It's great. It'll teach you everything about tenant screening. But first and foremost, I think it's most critical that an applicant is able and willing to pay rent. So if you write anything down from this webinar, write down able and willing to pay rent, because that is the most critical. So one, able, meaning they have the means to pay the rent. They are employed, or they have a giant trust fund, or they just have a lot of money in the bank, or maybe they have an inheritance, or like they have the money somehow, or the income. And then two, are they willing? Do they have a chip on their shoulder, and they have they're sticking their nose up at authority, or maybe they're super wealthy, but you talk to the last two landlords and you decide that they skipped out on rent, or they were late like 20 times. Like, that's just ridiculous. If they had the money, why didn't they pay? But you got to have both. You got to have able and willing. So I usually go for the people who are excited to apply and excited to live there, because they have a willingness to make me happy as the landlord. What I do when I talk to the last two landlords, so this is key, I talk to the last two landlords, I always end the conversation with, would you rent to them again? Because amongst all the questions I might ask, that is actually what summarizes that experience up the best. Would you do it all over again? And if they hesitate or they say no, then that's it. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to be that landlord who wouldn't rent to them again. It is so important, so important that you know what the rules are for discrimination, because that, I think, more than anything else, has gotten landlords and property managers into trouble time and time again. So whether it's just a complaint filed, or you might lose your property management license or real estate license from the board, or you have $100,000 lawsuit on your hand, like this, that happens. That's real. So it's important to know what the federal 7, I call them federal 7, but federal discrimination classes or protected classes are. And that's race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, and disability. So each county and city usually has their own additional classes, like whether or not somebody's married, or sexual preference, things like that. But it's important to know at least on a national level what they are. Now, national origin, some people don't realize what that is. That's like discriminating against someone because they were Haitian or Russian or something like that. Familial status is typically related to children and how many kids they might have, or if they're pregnant. You can't do that. You certainly have to follow your occupancy rules in your county, but you can't discriminate against one group or another just because they have more children, as long as they're in the occupancy limits. Okay, great. We have more questions coming through. Thank you, you guys. That's awesome. Okay, next. Again, each state and locality has their own protected classes. And last but not least, sex offender is not a protected class. It sounds silly that I have to say that, but you wouldn't believe the hate mail I get about that, because I've never found anywhere, even the Attorney General of California wrote a document about this, that sex offenders are not a protected class. Now, California is the only place that I've seen where it says you can't discriminate based on the person's appearance on a sex offender registry database, but you can still discriminate based on the judgment, based on the judgment that they have on their background check. So, if you want to check the sex offender database, it's down at the bottom. There's a link there. It's nsopw.gov. That stands for National Sex Offender Public Website.gov. Leave it up to the government to make a crazy acronym like that, but they did. And there's also a URL down there about something we wrote about our research into that. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's talk about credit reports and background checks. I'm actually going to show you what I use, what these credit reports and background checks look like. And so let me pan over to that real quick. Okay. You guys, all of you should be able to see a sample credit report from James Hacker. This is not a real credit report. This is a sample, so all the data is made up, but it is a good example. So don't think you're looking at somebody's real credit report. But this is a credit report provided by Experian provided by Cozy, and the data comes from Experian. We actually worked with Experian for 9 months to develop their API system that they use now and market worldwide. So we were their flagship company to help them build this. And what we wanted to do was create a system where it not only gives the landlord and the tenant the same credit report at the same time, and it's unbiased, and it's just a great way to get it, but also make it free for the landlord, make it cheap for the tenant, and make it the prettiest looking credit report you could possibly find. So we did that, and this is an example of it. Mr. James Hacker has a score of 744, which is awesome. I usually go for about 700 or higher, and then if I can't find anybody with that after a week or two, I'll lower it down to 650 and try again. But the best part about this credit report is exactly what it shows you here, the total monthly payments and the total debt that somebody might have. I think it's critical that you know where their monthly payments are going. I don't care what they're buying, but I do care, do they have 20 mortgages that I need to know about? It's one thing to have total debt of $200,000, but, I want to know if that's $200,000 in medical debt, or is that a student loan, from 20 years ago? I hope not. That's a long time for still have $200,000, but or is it a mortgage, or is it credit card debt? Geez, if that person had $200,000 in credit card debt, like, no way, man, you're not going to rent my place. So it's important to know how that debt is divided up, because I would rent to somebody with $200,000 in mortgage or medical debt any day of the week over somebody who has even $20,000 in credit card debt, because that shows fiscal responsibility, and credit card debt is a lot harder to pay off. Next, it shows you how many accounts have ever been late and how long it's been since those accounts have been late. So that's useful information. And then next, it shows you every single trade line that might be in the credit report. It shows you what the original amount of the debt was. It shows you the current balance that's still owed. And then in this case, it shows you, this guy was late in March of 2014, which I wouldn't really care, because that's almost 2 years ago now. So a little less than 2 years. So, that's a long time. And then you can go through and see which accounts have been closed and what's still happening. So it's really detailed. It's the prettiest report I've ever seen. It does give you all the same data that those data exports do, and it's free. So that's what I love about it. It's really easy to get. This is an example of a background check from Cozy, and this is how I get these reports. So I will show you. I'm trying to make it bigger for you. Okay, so let's do a little trivia here. You'll get bragging rights if for the first person to write in the question box who Buster Bluth and George Michael Bluth are, because we have two different reports here. Let's look at Buster's. Buster's is, this report came back and it shows that we did a social security verification, eviction search, sex offender search, terrorist watch list, criminal at a national level, and county criminal searches. And it shows that he didn't have any, hits, or nothing came back. But George Michael Bluth actually had something come up at the national level, so we dug a little deeper and found that he had an arson charge, arson felony in Orange County, which is huge. So I would not want him renting from my place if he has a conviction for arson. So that's a big deal. I don't know how you would find that otherwise if you didn't run a background check, but that stuff's pretty common. All right. Any guesses? Yes. Okay. The winner is Brent. Way to go. We have a lot of people. Okay. Oh, Brent, you also said they were brothers. Yes, that's true. Okay. Mindy, good job. Carrie, good job. Okay. So that is a background check from Cozy. The best part about these, not only is it free, but I can require these as part of the application. So, and this is optional, but I choose to do this. I say to my tenants, listen, there's no application fee, but if you want to apply, you have to purchase this credit report and background check, and Cozy will walk you through it. It takes all of maybe 5 or 6 minutes to do everything. And it'll verify their identity, and then they pay for those as well. So it's all built into the application. And then when I first get that application, the first time I ever have to see it, it's a complete package. It has all the data I need to really decide if this is going further. So that's what I suggest. I love doing it that way. It's saved me, I don't know, dozens of hours every time I deal with multiple applicants. All right, let's go back to the presentation here. Okay, great. Let me know if you can't see this, say something on the phone or say something on the chat window. Oh, Kevin is asking, can an applicant share the report with other landlords? That's a great question. Cozy actually had that ability previously, and then to make some updates, we had to halt that, but we're putting it back in fairly soon. So yes, so an applicant, if they don't get accepted at your place, we're working on a way so they can take that application or that credit report and background check, and then also share it with a new landlord as well. I mean, I suppose they could print it out too and take it with them. And Cozy doesn't stop them from doing that. Okay, so the next step is deciding if you're going to approve or reject them. If you approve them, if you decide you want them and they're qualified, they're great, you love them, call them up, be excited. Just say, hey, listen, thank you so much for coming by and submitting your application. I just want to tell you that you got the place. Congratulations. I'm excited to have you as a tenant. And they will usually get real excited too. And that creates a sense of emotion, a sense of joy that they now associate with your property. So what a fantastic way to start out a lease. If you have to reject them, and you will reject people, what I do, and not everyone does this, but what I do is I actually reject them by phone first. So I tell them the news in person, not in person, over the phone, and that gives them a chance to take it in and ask questions. Because what I don't want is somebody going off the deep end and getting angry about it. But if you give them a chance to voice their anger, to name it and just to say, ask the questions like why, they will just accept it a lot easier. But I will always follow up with an email or some sort of written notification too. If federal law says that if you take a credit report, you then have to give them a way to get that if you reject them based on that. But if you use Cozy, they already have it. So there's no extra involvement or no steps that you have to take extra. Number 3, I just mentioned this. If you reject them based on credit, you need to help them figure it out. But if you use Cozy, then you can skip that step. All right, next, after you find a tenant that you love and you've approved, then you can move on to the security deposit, right? So what I've done in the past, and I'm talking about security deposits, but you can also sometimes call them holding deposits depending on when you accept them. But I like to and always collect deposits before the lease signing. So what I'm trying to avoid is someone just not showing up to lease signing and I don't have any recourse. I want to get them invested, and I want to take that unit off the market. So the only way I do that is if I collect money from them. What I'll often say is if you want me to hold this place for you while we go through the application process, just give me the deposit. And if I reject you, I'll give it back. And if I accept you, then that just turns into the security deposit, and we'll just hold that for the remainder of the lease. If you, I should say you need to document the deposit somehow. It doesn't have to be a paper receipt, and actually I don't like paper receipts, but if you collect it through Cozy, which you can do before you even sign a lease, they'll have a copy. They'll have a receipt of some sort electronically in there, so that'll be easy. Holding deposits are amazing. I use that to take the place off the market, and a lot of times they won't want to give me that holding deposit, but that's fine. I'll still process their application, but I won't take the unit off the market. I will still show it. It's a hassle, but I'll still show it. I'll still go through and still collect applications, and I'll just let them know that if somebody goes through that application process quicker than them, and or I find somebody that's more qualified, then I will I'll go with them. So if they want assurance, then they need to give me some money. In most states, you're allowed to collect 1 to 2 months worth of a deposit. So that's great. I think that's enough. I usually collect 1. Sometimes on smaller properties, I'll collect 2, but I have one property that rents for $5,000, and I just can't, in my right mind, I can't ask them to pay $10,000 in a deposit. So I usually just do 1 month, but check your state laws. Landlordology can help you figure that out too if you just go to the state law section. Last but not least, do not commingle funds ever, 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 ever. And what I mean is when you take a deposit, don't put it in with your personal checking account. That is just an accident waiting to happen because you'll spend it. We're all human. We all do it. So I suggest you set up a separate deposit account for each property or unit that you have. Now, if you have 100 units, that's maybe not reasonable. You need an escrow account for all of them, but definitely set up, if you only have a few, like under 10, go get yourself a free money market account. There's a ton of companies out there. I like Ally, Ally. They have a high interest rate and it's free, so there's no fees. And you can get check writing ability out of that account. So next time you need to give the deposit back, you just write a check from that account and everything's clean and crisp. And if you have to give interest on it, then it's the only money in there, so it's real easy. But do not commingle funds. Most states require that you do not commingle funds, and if you do, you sometimes lose your right to withhold any of the deposit. So don't put yourself in that position. Next, after you collect the deposit, after you have an application and they're great, you need to get them signed to a lease as fast as possible. So the lease. Use a rock solid lease and stick to it. I can't express that enough. Go find yourself a solid state-specific template that you can customize and that you can also have a lawyer in your area look at. Because once you build that lease, you can use it for years to come. But if you just settle for a free lease somewhere, you have no idea if it's going to work in your state, and it's not tried and true, it's not tested. So go get yourself a good lease. I think anything under 5 pages is probably a little too shy. Now, some will argue with me on that, but use simple language, simple words. Just make it very easy to understand, and make sure you have a lot of coverage in there. So a lawyer will be able to help you out. But go to Landlordology too. We have a directory where there's a bunch of sites that I recommend. I don't have any affiliation with them, but recommend these sites to help you find a lease. I do prefer and mandate all the adults on there sign with joint and several liability. It means that they're all responsible for the entire amount. I don't, I sometimes will accept partial payments or payments from one tenant and the other together will equal the total amount, but it doesn't really matter because they're signed a joint and several liability in the lease. So if one disappears, the other one still has to pay the full amount. 3, what I like to do is review the lease with my applicants. Now that is critical because I think you really do, like, just as a person to person, you really need to make sure that they understand it. And if you walk through the lease with them and just spend a half an hour talking to them about it, then they can't say they didn't know. So I think that's powerful. What I do is I usually say, if they're local, I'll say, hey, listen, congratulations, you've been approved. I'd love to take you to Starbucks and buy you a cup of coffee and we'll go through this lease. And they usually love it, right? It's adding to that experience. If they're not local, what I'll do is I'll have them sign it digitally, electronically from wherever they are. And I'll use a company called Hello Sign. You can check that out. It's free. You get 3 signings a month, I think, which is great for most landlords. But if you have more than that, you might want to look at CudaSign or DocuSign. Now, electronic signatures are legal. They will hold up just as normal as well as any other written signature, and that's because of the E-Sign Act of 2000, which is an act that Congress passed trying to promote interstate commerce over the web. So that's really great to know that it is powerful. Last but not least, mandate automatic and online payments. So in the lease, make sure you tell them you have to pay me through this method, and I use Cozy. It's really easy. You set up an account, I'll help you do it, and you have to set up automatic payments. So do it that way. They won't forget. And if they have a bank account or they have a credit card, they can pay through Cozy, and it's easy. So that's how I actually avoid late fees completely. So I don't even have to deal with late fees because I've mandated this in my lease, and I find good tenants who love paying online. So I know that's not an option for every area of the country, but I think the majority of the people do want to pay bills online. They do that with their utilities, they do it with their cell phones, so why not do it with their rent? Last but not least, provide a copy of the lease to the tenants. This is so critical. I always print out multiple copies if I'm meeting in person, but if they sign it digitally, then they have a copy already. you could actually get in trouble and lose your ability to withhold a deposit if you don't provide a copy of the lease to the tenants, oftentimes within 7 days afterwards. So just do it right when you're signing it. Just make it easy. I don't care how many pages it is, just make it easy. All right, now we've handled the incoming tenant, right? Somewhere between the 60-day mark and hopefully the 30-day mark, you've done all of this, right? The incoming tenant has given you a deposit and signed a lease, but now you need to focus on the outgoing tenant, the person who's leaving. So how do you make sure that they leave on time, they don't stay over, and they clean the place really well so you don't have to do it? Oh, great. All right. Yeah, actually, Nick, you were asking how many pages are my leases. My lease is 13 pages, and I bought my lease through U.S. legal forms, but that was years ago, and I've had a lawyer look at it, and I'm really comfortable with it. But you can also use Rocket Lawyer or Nolo or a variety of other that we have listed on Landlordology, because they're all really great as long as it's state specific. Okay, Larry's asking about the deposit. When you collect a holding fee, do you have a form for future tenant to sign? Yes, no, I don't have a form, but I do tell them, listen, this is a holding fee. If you back out for any reason, this is a holding deposit, earnest money deposit. If you back out, you lose it. That's what it's for. So if you want to put that in writing, go ahead. But otherwise, it's kind of hard for them to argue that they didn't know it was a holding deposit when they're giving it before they apply or before they sign the lease. It's pretty obvious. So anyway, I hope that helps. Brent is asking, do I ever have applicants ask for a refund for the cost of the credit or background check? You know what? We process tens of thousands of people through Cozy with credit reports and background checks. And we do occasionally get someone who's pissed off because they didn't get the place and then they want their money back. That happens. You're going to get that no matter how you collect, screen tenants or whatever. But the beauty is you're not in the middle. You don't collect the money. Cozy collects the money. And the answer is always no. Application fees or screening fees are non-refundable. It's just an industry standard. And not application fees. For screening, they actually get a copy of the report. So they actually received a product or a good for that money. So if they can't really give that back, so nor should they get their money back. It's not contingent upon getting the place. All right, hope that helps. I answered some quick questions. So for the move out phase, how do you get the tenant to move out? This is a problem in a lot of areas. So what I do is I provide an initial inspection if requested. I don't offer it. I think in California you do sometimes, but in a lot of states you don't. But I do, if they want me to kind of come in 2 weeks prior and say, hey, can you take a look around and let me know what I need to fix? Then the answer is absolutely, because that's going to increase the chances of them doing a good job. I don't ever throw away abandoned personal property. So every state has their own rules on that. Sometimes, like I think in Texas, you can you just give them notice and then you can sell it, which is kind of neat. Then you can make some money back if they owe you money. But a lot of times you can't. You just have to store it. You have to protect it. So whether that's putting it in the basement or actually taking it to a storage facility and then putting it in their name and saying, hey, listen, if you want your stuff, it's at this storage facility. If you don't get it in 60 days or make another payment, then they're going to sell your stuff. So make sure you understand what your state laws are on abandoned personal property. We have state law guides on Landlordology, which I'll talk about later, which will help with that. And then last, after somebody leaves, make sure that last final inspection, the final inspection, happens within 24 hours after they move out and they return the keys. You never want to wait weeks. I know some people who, some managers even, they just have a lot on their plate. It's a busy month and they just don't get to the property for weeks. And, a lot can happen. What if a pipe busts, in that time? And now you're saying the tenant busted a pipe when he really didn't. So you really don't have any credibility if you wait too long. And this is an important note. The tenant does not need to be present. Now, if they ever ask me to be there, I'll always say yes, because I don't want that to come back and bite me. But I usually just tell them, hey, listen, I'm doing the final move out inspection at 3:00. After you've moved out, if you want to be there, that's fine. But I won't do it until after you actually turn in your keys. Next, after they're moved out, give them. Let's move on to this. in order to get them to do the cleaning and the repairs, or for you to do the cleaning and repairs, what I like to do is actually utilize move in and move out times in my lease. Now, what this means is in my lease, it actually says this lease starts at 2 p.m. on the day it starts and it ends at 10 a.m. on the day it ends. So if I have a lease ending on the 30th, it actually ends at 10 a.m. So and I make sure that they know that. So they, and I remind them a bunch before they leave. They have to have keys to me by 10 a.m. And chances are they will move out the day before and give me the keys the day before because they don't really want to deal with moving between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So they'll do it the day before. But even if they do wait till the last second, then I have my next lease, my guy moving in on the 1st, starting at 2 p.m. That's when he can move in according to his lease. So that gives me 28 hours to do whatever I want to that property. It's covered, these properties are not rented by the hour, they are rented by the month. So you can put times in there. It's just like a hotel, right? You're paying by the night, not by the hour. So that gives me 28 hours. I can resurface a hardwood floor in 28 hours. I can, repair an entire wall of drywall in 28 hours. I can paint most of a house in 28 hours. Like I can do a lot. And if you know what needs to happen before that last minute, like you're kind of checking up on the place, then you can schedule contractors well in advance and have them waiting at the door at 10 a.m. So that's how I get a lot of my cleaning done. I think that is a critical point. So write that down if you've got a notepad, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. Go ahead and put those move in, move out times in your lease, and you'll save yourself a lot of hassle because then you can actually have somebody move out one day and the next person moves in the next day, and you have rent covered for all of that. If you aren't able to be there or you have a remote property, then you could use a lockbox or a trusted handyman. What I do is I put a key there and I just tell these contractors that I do trust, you go let yourself in. The place is empty, so hopefully I've done the move out inspection prior to any repairs getting done. So the tenant will never have to deal with any issues that the contractors cause. But I never tell my tenants where the lockbox is or the key that's in there. And if heaven forbid they do lock themselves out and I give them access to the lockbox, then I always change the combo. So you never want the tenants to actually use it because they'll give the combo to their friends and they'll forget to put the key back. Keep the receipts and estimates. This is critical. You really can't hold the deposit for anything that is not in a receipt form. You don't have proof of. We'll get to that later, but keep everything, every sort of documentation. It is okay to actually take an estimate and do the repair later. For bigger things like floor resurfacing, sometimes they can't get it done on the day you need it to, so you can do it later. So work hard, work fast. You can do a lot in 28 hours. Next, you are collecting the first month's rent from the incoming tenant. So that tenant's moved out, everything's getting clean, you're dealing with the new person now, and you want them to pay you that first month's rent. I always require that first month's rent to be paid before they move in. So like right then, either right before, and I make sure that money is cleared. I think it's important for you to know what your state law is on prepaid rent. Many times you can't collect more than 1 month's prepaid rent. So if you do collect first month's rent before it starts, then you probably can't collect last month's rent. So make sure you know. A lot of people don't know that it is limited. I don't think that last month's rent is worth it. So, I can see your flaming arrows coming at me, but a lot of people collect last month's rent. Honestly, I think it's worthless. And the reason I say that is because in many states, like Massachusetts, you have to use last month's rent for last month's rent. And many times the tenant will forget, or if they set up automatic payments, they will pay you anyway on the last month. And it's a hassle. So if they leave, let's say the deposit was $1,000 and they leave $5,000 in damage, you actually can't use that last month's rent to handle the damages because it's not damage deposit, it's last month's rent. So if you just want more security, and that's all that last month's rent really is, it's just security against them abandoning the last month, then just collect more of a deposit, right? Isn't that easier? Because then you can use it for rent or security deposit. It's many states allow 2 times the monthly rent or more. So just collect a bigger deposit. It's easy that way. And to be honest, most tenants will like the idea of paying more of a refundable thing. rather than last month's rent, which is not refundable. All right, now after you're collecting the first month's rent, you need to handle the keys. This is hard unless you're local, right? How do you handle the keys? How do you give them access if your property is like 3,000 miles away? Well, you need somebody on the ground to do it. Whether that's a property manager to help you or you do it yourself, which I wouldn't recommend flying out for key distribution, but you could, I suppose. But if you have local properties, make sure they understand they cannot have the keys before, 2 p.m. when their lease starts, right? If you let them move in early, beware that something's up. If they ask for it, because a lot of times that's part of a scheme to get into your property. But if everything's good and they've already paid the first month's rent and they want to move in early, I usually say, sure, but let's alter your lease. Let's sign an addendum and you have to pay for it. So we'll prorate the days and you have to pay for those extra 2 days. They usually will just say, oh, never mind. So I think that they just want a free couple days. But if you can help them and you want to, go for it. Just make sure you put it in the lease and then make sure that that it's documented. Number 2, charge for earlier move-ins. I just mentioned that. And then make sure that you document the number of keys in the lease. I didn't learn this for a couple of years, but I think it's really important. If you give them 3 keys, make sure you say you gave them 3 original keys. Or if you have 1 original and 2 copies, put that in there. Because if they give you back 4 keys and you only gave them 3 keys and 1 original, let's say, was part of that, and they gave you 4 copies and no original, that means they lost a key, or that means they made extra copies and they didn't tell you about it. So I always prohibit copies being made, and if they don't give me back exactly what I gave them, then I change the locks on their expense, because they have keys floating out there and I can't risk the safety of the next tenant. So I will always change the locks using Quickset. They have a great little lock system. I'll change the locks anyway, but if they don't give me the right keys back, then they're paying for it. Okay, number 4, prohibit copies on the lease. I just mentioned that. And then next is the move-in, move-out inspection. This is awesome. So when a tenant moves in, right, you have to give them the ability to document the condition of the property. Some states talk about that, some states don't, but I think it's always a good idea. So get yourself a good move-in, move-out inspection sheet. It's just a little checklist, and let them do it. Now, I've heard from landlords that say, no way, I'm never letting a tenant do it. They will make up stuff. It's like, no, they won't. They will try to maybe, but you hopefully have been in the property a couple times while this whole repair cleaning process is going, and you know that there's not a giant hole in the wall, right? So if they put a hole in the wall and they try to pass it off as the last tenant, you can just say that you're lying. You did that with your giant couch when you moved it around the corner. So it's important to know what the condition is like and to give them the ability to have a say. If you don't give them the control over that, then they can't be obligated to it because they didn't have a say in it. So make sure they do it and then double check it when they're done. I always tell them to give it to me within 3 days. What I like to do to try to help that emotion, that joy of moving in, I like to give them a $10 welcome gift. Now, I used to give out Target gift cards and Walmart gift cards and all these other things, sometimes upwards of $20. And I never actually started getting a thank you for that until I started giving out toilet paper. Right. It doesn't make any sense. But so what I do now is I do bathroom essentials. I give them a small little list or a small little pile of independently wrapped toilet paper, independently wrapped paper towels. I give them a little bar of travel soap that you can get anywhere for like $1. And then I give them a shower liner, and you can get those at the dollar store too. Just a clear shower liner, just really cheap. And what I've found is they really actually, when they're moving on move-in day, they really are sweaty, they're stinky, they want to shower, but they don't realize a lot of times that shower, properties don't come with shower curtains, and all of their stuff is already boxed up. So it's a hassle. So if you give them this, they can use the restroom, they can take a shower, they can feel good about themselves. And it makes it look like you're a landlord that actually pays attention and cares about them. So bathroom essentials, those are the ones that I started getting thank yous for, and it usually only cost me about $10. So the day they move in or the day after, follow up with a phone call. You don't have to be there, you shouldn't be there, but just follow up and say, hey, how'd it go? And oftentimes they'll say, hey, listen, we blew a circuit. I can't find the circuit breaker, or, how do you turn on these lights? I can't figure it out. So that kind of stuff will just help them feel at home quicker. So just give them a call, check in with them. All right, so that concludes the majority of the process. I sped through that so fast, and thank you guys for going with me. That was about an hour, and I was hoping to make it less, but I went on some tangents with some stories. But if you have a tenant who's moved in, they're happy, you call them, they said everything's great, it is now time to celebrate. And that is what I like to picture a successful move in, move out as a flawless, no vacancy, successful move out. My daughter, she's about 4 almost, and she loves these guys. She thinks she's a minion, and she actually walks around making the noise like wee 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 because she thinks she's a minion. So anyway, dance like these guys. It's fun. Congratulations, you just got somebody moved in and you didn't have to pay for any vacancy. Now you still have to deal with the tenant who just moved out and is kind of waiting or harassing you already for his deposit. Yeah, I know some of you already know what that's about. It's funny how some tenants think they get their deposit back right away, but most states say that a landlord has about 15 to 45 days to get back a deposit, depending on what it is. Make sure you know what the deposit deductions are and what they're allowed for. And so I'm going to roll through these. You are allowed to withhold part or all of the deposit for unpaid rent, for cleaning to return the property in move-in condition, which is critical. That's why you do those inspection sheets and the cleaning sheets. And then any other damages besides normal wear and tear. A lot of times, tenants will think a giant scratch on the hardwood floor is normal, and it's just not. They just can't do that. So, or a hole in the wall is normal, and it's just, or the mold in the shower. It's like, oh, it's a wet place, it gets moldy. Well, it's like it doesn't get moldy if you clean it. So that kind of stuff you need to really look at, and if it's not normal wear and tear, then you can charge for it. And the last, you can charge them for missing keys or changing the locks if they didn't follow the lease, and then any replacement or restoration of personal property. So if you provide things like appliances or couches and they've stained, put grape juice all over the cushion, you can charge them to get that clean because that wasn't there when they moved in. That was just careless. I think the most common issue is people think that normal wear and tear on a carpet is stains, food stains or cigarette burns. And the tenants that sometimes come to me with that, I just say, I'm sorry, like it's never acceptable to eat spaghetti on the couch over a white carpet. Like, I know we all do it, right? We all eat in front of the TV, but like if you're gonna eat in front of the TV, you have to have enough decency not to spill it on the floor. So that's why we have dining rooms and tables, and the tables are not made of carpet; they're made of something you can wipe down. So normal wear and tear is not huge stains. It's more like padded down carpet, slight discolorations, things like that. And once you itemize those damages and send them a copy of any receipt, you do have to do that. In most states, it's law that you have to put that together and send that to them within a certain amount of time. Then you can issue the deposit refund. So make sure you send that itemized list before you refund any money. You never want to send them the money at the same time as the list because they will take that money and then argue about the rest of it. If you say, here's the list, feel free to talk to me about it, then they will come back and they will say, oh yeah, I don't really agree with some of it, but I'd rather have some of my money back than all of it. And make sure that you're doing it right. Don't do anything illegal. Don't hold anything that you shouldn't hold anything for, but do it right. And then hold that deposit hostage until they agree to it. Now, if they really put up a fight, you might want to get it in writing that they're agreeing to it, but then you can get back whatever the remaining deposit is. You can also use a good faith estimate, which I mentioned earlier, for repairs. So if you have, maybe a door that they took off the hinges and you can't get back on and you need to hire somebody to do it, you could get an estimate for it and then hold that money. Now, if the estimate comes back more or less, you can always go back to the tenant and correct it later, but you can hold that money with a good faith estimate. That's legit. The work doesn't have to be done right then and there. Now, make sure that you refund within the state law limit after the tenant vacates and the lease is terminated. So It is a little different from state to state, but a lot of times a tenant will leave like 90 days early and just say, I don't want to pay the rest. You shouldn't get back the deposit because the lease isn't up yet. Just because they abandon the place doesn't mean that they get the deposit back. The lease is still good. So oftentimes you just go find another tenant and then they're responsible until that point. But make sure that you got both the lease ended and they're gone before you consider giving the deposit back. All right, now lastly, before before we end and go to Q&A, I always like to dump as many resources as I can on you so that you can take this information and learn more. I want you to be as profitable as you can be in your business. And so we have some resources for you. So one, go check out Landlordology. I think it's a great site. It's where I live most of my day, just building community and answering questions. But we also have something called our state law guides. And we actually have more than what's this. I think we did both North and South Dakota recently, as well as Mississippi. But click on anything that's green and you can go to that URL and you'll actually get a detailed list of all the state laws summarized for your area. So check that out. It's a great way to learn quickly. And we didn't just put the state laws up there. We actually linked to the statutes. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can actually go read it yourself. So I hope that helps. These are the landlord guides. These are guides that I wrote. I mentioned one of them earlier. You can get them all for free on Landlordology/guides. And I've got copies here. You can see them: Landlord's Guide to Tenant Screening, Tenant Onboarding, which is what this presentation is about. It's the red one. Then we also have Marketing with Craigslist, and we have this green one called Rent Collection. You can get the PDF for free, or even on Amazon, you can get a printed version of this one, which is awesome. We actually don't make any money on it. We just sell it to you at cost because we want you to have it. So check it out. It's a lot of information about how to flawlessly collect rent and never have to worry about it again. So I hope that helps. Those are fantastic. I put my heart and soul into those things. Hope you like them. I guess let me know if you don't like them, but don't be too harsh. Last is Cozy. So I've mentioned Cozy a couple times. It's what I use to manage my properties. I could use it for 5 properties, or I could use it for 500 properties, and it would still be free for me. So check it out. It'll tell you not only help you collect applications and tenant screening, but then it'll dump them into a lease, and you can then collect rent for free. So it's really, really easy. You don't have to deal with paper checks anymore, and it's completely mobile friendly as well. All right, next, we also have a podcast. So you could check it out. It's called asklucas.com or Ask Lucas, and it's on Landlordology. You can listen to it through iTunes or on Stitcher. And what you do is you ask a question over voicemail, and then I'll try to answer it if it's applicable and applicable to a broad audience. So that's been fun. I've enjoyed doing that. And then this is something that just came up recently. We are not Community Buying Group. This is just a company who's run by a friend of ours, and they said, hey, listen, we have products and services, like you can get a membership with us and get all these amazing discounts. And I said, sounds too good to be true, but so does Cozy, so let me check it out. And I signed up for it for free, and instantly I was able to get a discount code for Sherwin-Williams. And because this webinar is about move in, move out, and all kinds of repairs that need to happen, many times it's painting. You can instantly save 40% on Sherwin-Williams paint. And if you've ever used their paint, it's really good stuff. I bought a $100 gallon of paint for $60. So you can do that. It doesn't cost you anything. If you were to go to them separately, it would cost you $99 a year. But you can just sign up using that link. It has to be that link because that's how they know to give you the discount. But you also get discounts at Lowe's and Office Depot and Sears. So check it out. You got nothing to lose. It's free. That's not us, and that's a different company, but I thought I'd share it with you as a resource for free. All right, so we have ended the presentation. The webinar content part of it is over, but now that's my favorite part. It's actually Q&A. So I can't wait to hear what you guys have said. I'm going to open up this. I've got the questions here that I'm going to look at. And if you have a question you want to ask, go ahead and type it in the questions box. I'll see it, and then I'll answer it appropriately. So let's see. Srini is asking, what is the best way to estimate the rent for a property? I mean, how do you know what to rent it for? And I think that's a great question. So how do you price your property is what she's asking. And you can do a number of things. There's a number of tools out there. I think the most popular one is called Rentometer or Rentometer or rentometer, I think is what it's called, and it'll kind of price it out for you. I haven't had much luck with that tool because my area is so diverse. It tends to price it a little bit lower than what I'm able to get, but it's a good reference. I think, in my opinion, the best way to figure out what people are asking is to look on Craigslist, because in my area that's like a fire hose of information. Or look on Zillow or Trulia or wherever the rentals are, and just see what other people are asking. It doesn't mean that that's what they're getting, but it'll give you an idea. You can always price it high at 60 days out from the end of your lease and then work down. So that's what I would do, just trial and error. After a couple of leases, you'll know what that property will rent for typically. Okay, Mitch is asking, Cozy is free. Is the website that we have, or is the website that Cozy gives you free, and how do you get tenants to access it? That's a great question. So when you sign up for Cozy and you tell them about a property, you'll get a little URL that you can share with a tenant, and you can actually put that in all of your applications. That little URL will go there, and when somebody clicks on it, it'll take them to the page, that free web page that they give you, and it also has pictures of your property as well as an application they can fill out. So it's just a matter of sharing that URL. You can also share it through Twitter in Cozy, and also through email in Cozy. So it's real easy to get it out there. It works with every listing service out there because it's just a URL that you can share. Dante is asking, when do you usually request the potential tenants to fill out the application, before or after they visit? How do you justify the cost for them to fill it out even before they come see the place? That's a great question. Yeah. So most of the time, my applicants will want to see the place before they spend $34 on a background check and credit report. But every once in a while, they can't. They're out of state, or they really want the place, and they live in the area, they know where it is, they've driven past it, they've seen the pictures. I think the real key to having people fill out an application before they see it is to have amazing pictures. So I can't stress that enough. But yeah, so they usually fill it out after they see the place. But it does happen sometimes before. The application fee, or the fee for the credit report and background check, is never refundable. So it's up to them. Sometimes if I'm doing a landlord's open house and I have 8 people, eight groups come by, or I know that there's going to be 8 groups, I'll sometimes email them a few days before, and I'll say, I'm so excited to meet you on Saturday, but just so you know, there's a lot of people coming, and if you want to get this process started, if you're really interested, go ahead and fill out an application. And sometimes, maybe I'll waive the fees at that point and do a screening after they see it. You can definitely do that too. Okay, so Larry is asking, is it discrimination if you don't accept someone who has SSDI as their source of income? Social Security income? Is that what you meant? SSDI, I'm not familiar with that, but maybe you meant Social Security income. Is it discriminatory if you don't accept someone who has Social Security income as their source of income? Oh, yeah, Larry, thank you. Social Security. It depends. Actually, it depends. So at a federal level, source of income is not a protected class. But in states like California and Oregon and a couple others, source of income is. So meaning you cannot discriminate if they're getting money from Social Security or from an employer or from Section 8 housing. That's a source of income, so you can't discriminate it based on that. But if it is not a state protected class or a city protected class, then it's certainly not a federal one. Novella is asking, Novella, that's a pretty name. I like that. Do you allow children in your group home? If not, is that familial status discrimination? You know what? I've never actually had that situation come up because the people that typically want to rent a group home are typically young and want to live in a group. So I never, maybe I should clarify. When I say group home, I don't mean I'm renting out rooms in a house. I mean, I'm renting a single lease on a single house, and I have a group of tenants who all want to be roommates who apply together as one household. So if they had a kid in there somewhere and everyone was okay with it, then I wouldn't be okay. I wouldn't be able to discriminate up against that at all. But But if I had a single family with kids and they wanted to rent the whole house at the price I was asking, then that's that's okay. I'm not going to discriminate based on that. Okay, Matt is asking, in Oregon, I'm told it is better not to use fixed term leases. So let's see, I can't see all that. So I rent month to month. In that case, would you still ask for 60 days notice? You know, I love fixed term leases, but I have switched to month to month after a fixed term lease has ended, and I will continue to do 60 days notice. So I will write the lease as in this is a month to month, except that you have to give 60 days notice. So it's really 2 month by 2 month, but I give 60 days notice just because 30 days notice is really cutting it quick. I think that a lot of times you miss the group that you want to find. You miss the preparers, the people who are looking 45 days out. So 60 days is a requirement in my lease. Okay, Kevin is asking, oh, you already asked that. Great. All right. Brent is asking, do you ever have applicants ask for a refund on the credit and background check? I think I answered this. Yes, it happens, but no, I never give it to them. Okay, Jim is asking, can you share your lease with us? Jim, I wish I could. Actually, that would really constitute giving legal advice or giving you a legal document that I have no idea if it would work in your state. So I can't. What I would suggest is that you go to landlordology.com/directory and look at the legal and lease section, and you'll find a bunch of companies that we recommend. We don't get any money from them or anything, but just check them out. They're really great, and you can find a state-specific lease that's been reviewed by an army of lawyers that they have. Helen is asking, does a tenant have to move out before noon on the last day? Put it in your lease. If it's not in your lease, then it says they just have the day, so they can move out theoretically at 11:59, right? Right before midnight, because that's still that day. So that's why it's important to put times in your move out or in your lease about when the lease actually ends. There may be city laws where you're at. I'm not sure, but I've never seen one at a state level. Okay, so Thomas is asking, if tenants move out at 10 a.m. on the 30th, but move in at the next places at 2 p.m. on the 1st, where do the tenants expect to stay the night of the 30th? That's a great point, but it's actually not. It's not my problem. I know that sounds bold, but if they stay past midnight, now they're staying at the place on the 1st. So that's past their lease anyway. And I from a legal perspective, I don't want anybody in the property that doesn't have a lease to be there. So they have to move out the day of the lease that end, the last day of the lease, and I set that at 10 a.m. I've never actually had a problem with this. And so what they do is, especially if they know going into it, they will just find a place that they can move into, maybe a week before. I hope I hope if you're finding good tenants that prepare in life and do have decent funds so they can afford to overlap like a week of rent. And if they can't, a lot of times the ones that really are tight on money, they'll just figure out a place to stay. They'll stay with friends or family for a night, or they'll just book the new place like that day, right? They'll just stay at a hotel, or they'll actually have their lease start on the 30th at the next place, or they'll pay an extra day or something. So it's never really come up. I have had tenants ask me if they can stay, but they've never fought me on it. I just say no, and that's the end of it, and they're okay with it. Kevin is asking, what kind of scheme would it be? Kevin, I'm not sure. If you want to clarify, go ahead and put in another question. I'm not sure what you're referencing. It's probably something I was talking about earlier. Sorry. Nick is asking, what is the lock system you mentioned? Yeah, it's Quickset. It's KWIKSET. Check it out. Type in Quickset on Landlordology, and you'll find an article about it. It's a fantastic locking mechanism, and you can find this at every Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and there's a little key that you put in, a little like pin that you put in to change the locks, and you don't actually have to change the physical lock. You just get to rekey it, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's just you don't have to hire a locksmith. So check out or even type in the word locks into Landlordology in the search, and you'll find it. Okay, Nick is asking, oh yeah, that's the same question. Okay, Kevin is asking, how do you handle pest control with your tenants? Great question. So in my lease, and this is a lease clause, I say I am responsible for delivering a pest-free home on day of move-in, and I will warranty that for 2 weeks. So if you see anything for 2 weeks after you move in, that's on me because they were probably there when you moved in. But anything after the 2 week mark, that's usually kind of the tipping point to where the tenant has time to move in all their stuff, buy enough pizza, leave the pizza boxes sitting around, and then all of a sudden mice show up. So after 2 weeks, I make them responsible for it. Now, if it's something like termites or something that I know they had no influence on, maybe the building just has mice anyway because of other tenants, then I'll pick up the tab. I just think it's a good customer service. If they really didn't cause the problem, then I'm going to pay for it. Other areas like New York City in particular, they have very strict rules on things like bed bugs. So oftentimes, in other parts of the country, the responsibility of the bed bugs is borne by whoever brought them in, right? Like if the tenant was traveling and brought them back to the house, then they should pay to get rid of it. But in New York City, it's always the landlord's job. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So you want to make sure what your city laws are for that. Kevin Y is asking, what kind of scheme would it be? Oh, this is the same question. Okay, what kind of scheme would it be if they want to move in early before the lease starts? Oh, good question. Yeah. I said it might be a trick. You know what? A lot of times, I don't want to say a lot of times, but there are people out there that will write a check that bounces, and they'll give you a check and say, hey, I gave you my deposit. Now, can I just move in? And it's like last minute. You're desperate for a tenant, and it's like 3 days before the lease. There's a vacancy. So you think, okay, great. No problem. Here's the keys. I'll go cash your check. And next thing you know, they've moved in, the check is bounced, and their lease that they haven't signed or they hasn't started yet, they're in, right? They're in. So, when I hear that, it raises a red flag. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It might just mean they don't have a place to stay. But I pair it together with other things that they might have said or trying to do, and I think, this person might be a scammer. So that actually happened to my sister-in-law, who's a property manager, and someone moved in, and was in there for almost 3 months before she could evict him, and he didn't pay a dime, right? So he moved in early, lease hadn't started yet, he didn't pay any money. It was nasty. So I always say, if you are going to let somebody move in, make sure you alter the lease. So they're under a lease, right? They're there when they belong there. That's the general rule. Okay, Jennifer is asking, if you collected 2 months security deposit, can you hold all of that since the tenant is not paying their water bill or rent? Absolutely. Unpaid utilities and unpaid, especially a water bill and unpaid rent are certainly reasons to withhold the deposit. Now, make sure that you don't hold more than you actually are owed. So if you collected $2,000 and all of those bills come up to $1,500, you still have to give back $500. That's the rule. So the water bill is interesting because a water bill is actually something they can put a lien on your property for, even if it wasn't in your name. So water bills and sewer bills, typically the landlord is still responsible for those, even if the tenant just disappears. Now, cable and satellite and all that, not so much. Larry is asking, follow-up question to the holding deposit question. Has anyone ever demanded you return the holding fee because they changed their mind, and how did you respond? Yes. So anyone who's ever changed their mind has always asked for the holding deposit back. They think that they're entitled to it, or they just don't realize, despite having multiple conversations about it or getting into writing, they just think I can do whatever I want and I shouldn't have to pay for it. I just tell them, this is a verbatim what I usually say. I tell them, listen, I'm sorry, I took the price off the market and we talked about this, or I even have your signature on this. I can't get that time back. Like, you bought this time for me to take it off the market. I lost lots of opportunities to rent it to somebody else because I took it off the market for you. I can't get that time back, nor should you get this deposit back. So that's just how I phrase it. With that said, I'd never take more than I need. So if I am able to find somebody a few days later or a week later, then I will only keep the amount of money that pays for that vacancy. Does that make sense? So if he paid me 1 month's rent as a holding deposit and I actually rent it 7 days later, I'll only charge him for 7 days and I'll get back the rest. I think that's just fair. I don't want them taking me to court over it because it would just seem cruel in a sense. All right, Larry's also asking, do you try to have people sign the lease as soon as possible after they approved? Yes, 100% yes, because there is that window of time where they've applied and all they're invested in is either that deposit or, if I have a deposit, I'm not too concerned about it. But if they haven't given the deposit yet, all they've invested in is that credit check, and they could walk away with no harm done. So I follow up with them very quickly, and I write up a lease as soon as I can. I send it to them and say, hey, let's get together. All right, Marissa is asking, can a security deposit be returned via Cozy? That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. That is a highly requested feature, and we're working on it. Right now, the payment processing only goes one way. It goes from tenant to landlord, doesn't go the other way around. So you'd still have to write a check or do some other method for that. But it's on the roadmap. It will make it happen soon. Maybe 2016 is what we're shooting for. Mendy is asking, if you're having trouble getting your property rented, it's a slow time of year, do you ever settle for a shorter term lease, like 6 months? Yeah, you have to go with the crowd. So I actually will try to time all of my leases so they end around June 1st, May 1st or June 1st. And sometimes I've had to look for people in October. So I will write up 6-month lease and have the end around springtime. So the reason is I think that's the best time to find tenants. That's the time that I'm able to get the most money. The flowers are out, everything looks pretty, it's warm. So that's when I try to have the leases renew. And I will prefer to do 10 renewals all around the same 2 months rather than have 10 renewals or 10 vacancies or whatever scattered throughout the year, because then I'm always working, whereas I can just hustle and do it all in 2 months and then relax the rest of the year. Okay, so, Larry, you clarified, you said Social Security, disability insurance. I've never come across that in terms of your other question, but source of income is a protected class in some states. Robert is asking, I have a lot of one-bedroom apartments. I usually prefer to rent to individuals. Occasionally I rent to couples. No one-bedroom apartment has ever been rented to a couple with children. Am I wrong? Well, I'm sure it's happened, but to your point, the majority of counties that I've seen in all parts of the country, they usually say that the occupancy limit for a one-bedroom is 2 people. Now it can be an adult and the kid, or 2 kids, unlikely, but 2 kids or 2 adults or whatever. When you add that third person, now there's no longer a place for them to sleep. So it just gets into occupancy rules. But some counties, like my county, actually has a weird occupancy rule that doesn't follow that 2 per bedroom. So I suppose it would be fine. It also depends on if it's a 1-bedroom with den and all that stuff. But no, I don't know how to really answer that, but I'd say look at your occupancy rules. Okay, Mendy is asking, do you raise the rent when you switch to month to month, like 10% more? Yeah, I don't. Well, I guess I do about 10%. Yeah. So I actually like to add like a flat fee. So I'll say, if you want to opt for a month to month lease, it will cost you $200 more a month. And that way they know it's a flat number. And it's it's easy for them to understand and calculate, and they know what it is rather than just 10%. But put it in there and say a month-to-month lease is more flexible, and therefore you have to pay for it. And they will. Sometimes they will. It's worth it to them. Bo, hey, good to see you again. Thanks. All right, Bo is asking, can you share with us one random page of your lease so that those of us viewing can get an idea of what it looks like? Yes. Let me try. Okay, so it's just a standard lease. Let's see if I can do this. Oops, I don't want to end the webinar, cancel. All right, here we go. Let me see what I can do, Bo. Let me see. I'll try to be quick here. One page of the lease, my lease. Oops, that's not it. Here's a picture of my inspection form, if you guys want to see that. Example of, condition upon arrival, condition upon move out, and that was just the move in. So, all right, let's see what I can do here. Okay, so here's a picture of one page of the lease. and it's just pretty detailed. I would go through and check out those lease websites that I mentioned earlier on landlordology.com/directory, and then you can find it there. You can find some like that. All right, now questions. Let's go back to the questions. Perfect. Okay, guys, thanks. Hope that helped, Bo. Okay, Dante asking another quick question. Do you know any future exciting features coming to Cozy? Yes, there's actually a features and pricing page on cozy.co. You can check it out. They have it listed there. So I will tell you, we just released listings, which is great because it's actually going to be syndicated to a major site, as well as giving that beautiful web page to broadcast and show your listings. But also we are allowing credit cards now. So that's pretty cool because a tenant can pay with a credit card or a debit card, and it doesn't cost the landlord anything. So those are neat. More stuff is coming like lease signings, document storage, really great stuff. And it's all still going to be really free. The core services are going to be free. All right, so we have another question. Are there any good online resources for landlords about how to mitigate liability? I think the number one way to mitigate liability is to have a rock solid lease. So that is the number one thing. I think that'll take care of 70 to 90% of your problems. The other thing you can do is go get an umbrella insurance policy. Now, most home insurers will have also an umbrella policy you can buy. It's usually like $200 or $300 a year, so it's cheap, and it will cover you up to $1 million or $2 million, and that's above and beyond what your home insurance will cover. So if you get sued because someone breaks their back, and it costs more than what the home insurance will cover, this umbrella policy will cover that also. So that mitigates the liability or the responsibility. And that umbrella policy will cover not only that one property, but all of your properties too. So it's a great way to cover everything. I have a policy. I think it's a great idea. Frank is asking, if the tenants move out and have the power turned off, how can you perform repairs without power? You can't. You have to turn the power back on. So I always tell my tenants, you have to leave the power on for the full extent of your lease, to up until that last time, And now I've never actually had a problem with power getting shut off at 10 a.m. on the last day and then not on by 2. It's never been shut off. The tenants will usually just tell the power company I need my name off it by the 31st, and I will coordinate if I need to. I will help the new tenant take ownership on the 1st, so the power company never shuts it off. So anyway, that's what I do. Yes, David. Yep, Quickset Smart Lock, I think is the name of it. That's right. Thank you for chiming in about that lock, that landlord lock. Kevin is asking, you mentioned that people ask to move into the property early before the lease starts, but you said that you would have to amend the lease because it might be a scam. Yeah, I did mention that. I don't, as a theory, and here's my basis. I never want somebody living there that doesn't have an active lease. So if they want to move in a few days early, but their lease doesn't start for, 3 days, that's a problem to me because they're not legally allowed to live there yet. So if I'm okay with them moving in, I will have to just amend the lease and say it now starts 3 days early, and therefore I'll make them pay for those 3 days if I want to. But even if you don't make them pay for it, make sure that the lease shows that they had the right to live there on that day. It'll just pay dividends in the long run if you ever have to go to court. Okay, Morgan is asking, is it okay not to change the locks on move out? I'd also like to avoid safety concerns with new tenants, but I've had a locksmith advise against it on a glass slider door. There's no quick set there. Yeah, you're right. Slider doors don't have the way to change locks. Not very easily, I should say. They don't have any sort of advanced locking system. Some states do require that you change locks. Some states don't require it. I always think it's a great idea. I think it's a best practice, and it's a way to mitigate liability if a tenant comes back, with an extra key and then breaks in and steals stuff, or heaven forbid somebody actually gets hurt. That would be on you because you didn't take the due diligence. So with sliding glass doors, go get a safety bar. You can buy them on Amazon. They're like $10. You can secure it to the wall and actually tell the tenant to use it always. So not only does it keep kids from walking outside with sliding glass doors, but it actually will lock the door permanently from the inside so that no one with a key can get in from the outside. And then they just move the safety bar when they want to go outside. So that's what I would suggest for all sliding glass doors. Kevin is saying, thank you, great webinar. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. It's really nice of you. Another Kevin is asking if you have to provide a receipt for any security deposits held and you did the cleaning yourself, would you be able to generate a receipt for your time? Okay, so Kevin, you're asking, can you charge for your time to clean the place when it was the tenant's responsibility to do so? The answer, you're not going to like it. I think the answer is no. You cannot charge for your time unless you already have a pricing sheet for that service. So, for example, a carpenter who does professional carpentry for other people has a price list. He knows if I create a mantle, or a door or something, it costs $200. And he has to do that in the property, then he knows how much it's going to cost. He has a legitimate business to do that, and he can charge $200 if that carpenter is also the landlord. But if, let's say cleaning for say, you go and you clean up because it's just easier that way, and I've certainly done it, you can't make up some arbitrary number. You can't say, I think my time's worth $20 an hour, because you're just making that up. It very well may be worth $20, maybe worth $100 an hour, but how are you going to prove that to a judge? The carpenter can have a price list and say, this is what I charge customers, so I can do that. Likewise, I guess if you had a professional cleaning company and you went in and did it, you could say, here's my price list. So that would be okay. But unless you have a real price list, that's your trade, I don't suggest doing it. I've actually gotten away from doing cleaning, any sort of big cleanings myself, because it's a hassle. But also, if it's their job and they don't do it, then I'm going to make them pay for it. Point blank, I'm not going to spend my energy and my money to do it, my time. I have a family. I have a dog that needs walking, and so I just hire somebody. They do it, and it's easy. I get a receipt. Okay. Morgan saying, great session. Thank you very much. I started a rental a few years ago and had to learn the hard way, and via lots of reading, look forward to getting tenants on Cozy. That's awesome. Morgan, thank you for doing that. If any of you do sign up for Cozy, let me know. Shoot me an email. My email is lucas@landlordology.com, or the shorter version is lucas@cozy.co. Just shoot me an email. Let me know. I would love to celebrate with you. I'll do a little minion dance, and I really think it'll just save you countless hours and thousands of dollars every single month. The same software, the same stuff that you can do with Cozy, you can also find it more expensive software tools, like AppFolio and Buildium are the two that I think are comparable. But they have a little more bells and whistles, but they're also like crazy expensive. So Buildium is a minimum of $50 a month. AppFolio is $200 a month, and Cozy's free. So, I think it's just a huge value. Okay, great. Let's see. Marissa says, I recently signed up for Cozy and I absolutely love it. Marissa, that's awesome. Thank you. And minion dance. All right, so let's do this. I did get a few questions coming through over email, so let me look at those too. Kevin came in and said, this is awesome. Great webinar. Thank you, Lucas. I love Cozy too. Definitely don't miss going to the bank every single month and collecting checks. Yes, I hear you. Believe it or not, I have not been to the bank to deposit a rent check in over 3 years. Amazing, right? And if I do get any sort of checks from a tenant, I will do them through a little like mobile deposit on my phone, but that's far and few between. Okay, let me show you. There's a few more questions here. Let me pull open. All right, so you should be able to see. Oops. Yeah, there we go. We have a few more questions. Okay, Brandy from Montana is asking, any tips for out-of-state rental properties? Yes, if you are not willing to be an active landlord and get a tool like Cozy to help you manage that, then I think you need somebody on the ground. I think you need somebody on the ground regardless. So whether that's a neighbor who can check in on the property and pass out keys and do showings, or you hire the tenants who might live there. So I've done that before. I've actually told my current tenants, I said, hey, listen, I've got some showings I'd like to do. Would you mind hosting those? Clean up your living room, clean up your bedrooms, make the bed. I'll pay you $25 or $50, every time you show the property, and I will coordinate that. I'll make sure that you just have to be home and they'll show up. And if those people actually sign the lease, I'll give you another $100. And so they have a potential to make $150, and they not only keep the place clean because they want somebody to like it, but they will sell the place for you. They will tell you everything about, tell the new applicant everything about the location, how great the garbage disposal is. They'll say everything. And I don't want them to lie, but I do want them to ramp it up. And they will be excited because they want that money. So I'm incentivizing them and I get them to do it. They usually like to do it anyway because I typically treat them well, and they like me as a landlord, and they're happy to do it. And they don't have to go anywhere. They're usually home anyway. Okay, so Angie from Ohio is asking, should I lower my asking price during a down season? If so, by how much? And then how can I get a signed contract for a rental quickly? Yeah, so down seasons are rough. Down seasons for me are basically October through March, everything in the winter, because people don't want to rent in the winter. However, what I would suggest for a down season, if you know you can get more, go ahead and get the place rented, because a vacancy will kill you or kill the rental profit more than just lowering a little bit. So you want to lower it, get it rented quickly, and maybe do a short lease. Maybe do a month if you need to, but I would suggest maybe doing a short lease to get you through that down season. Like do a 6-month lease, and then in the springtime, tell them I'm raising the rent when your lease is up, and just let them know so they know to expect it. Okay, so Robert from your second question, I'm sorry, was how can I get a signed contract for a good rental quickly? You just have to stay on them. You have to be on top of things. So as soon as they apply and you've reviewed them through background checks and all that, and Cozy, you can do it in a matter of minutes. Then get a lease put together and get it over to them to review and set up a scheduled signing. Robert from California is asking, our maintenance man needs 5 working days to bring the vacant unit back to the rental condition. I cannot show the unit to prospective applicants before that is done. How would you like to reduce the 2-week vacancy time, or the minimum 2-week vacancy time, but how? You would like to get rid of that. So basically, your maintenance guy says, I need 5 days minimum to fix up the place. That's just the cost of working with the maintenance guy. So you're working on his hours, and I hope that there's not enough work to do 5 days worth. I mean, I can schedule an entire roof replacement. I can paint a whole house, and I can do all that in a day. So, if you've got one maintenance guy, you might want to consider trying to coordinate that yourself, and maybe not using one person, maybe just hiring contractors for each specific job and have them all come in within 2 days. So you might need to just decide to use somebody else. What you can do to minimize that vacancy time too is to also keep tabs on the condition of the property. So really encourage your last tenants to be clean and to help them, give them that cleaning list so they know what to clean and fix up. And there's nothing to say that you can't fix things before the lease is up. There was a broken window at one of my properties, and it happened 3 weeks before the lease was up. Well, I didn't wait. I mean, it wasn't an exterior window; it was just an interior window, so it was fine. But there wasn't a security issue. But I could have waited till the end of the lease. But I just said, "Hey, listen, I'm sending a window guy over, and you have to be there, and we're going to fix it." So I knocked that out long before the lease was over, so I didn't have to deal with it later. So that's how you minimize it. David from Arizona is saying, I'm a new landlord. With your system, I need to know what the site provides in detail. No guessing. Thanks, David. I'm really glad you're using Cozy. I'm assuming you're using Cozy and not just visiting Landlordology. But yeah, so there's also a fantastic FAQ site. I'll show you that right now. Let's do this. If you go to let's go to support.cozy.co, and that's also linked from the homepage. It will show you a support site that tells you everything about how to use it for landlords and for tenants. So let's say you're trying to get your tenant set up on rent, and they have the question, how do I get my rent set up? Here's a step-by-step guide. Many of these articles actually have pictures. So, let's see if I can find one. Nope, not that one. Or maybe it's just taking a long time. Sometimes when I'm doing a webinar, the speed of the internet crawls. Yeah, here's a picture. So it'll show you what things look like too. So this is a great resource. You can also email support@cozy.co and they'll walk you through, you'll get the live people to help you walk you through it. Okay, so next question. Morgan from Pennsylvania is asking, I'm looking for tips on transitioning between tenants when repairs are needed. Carpet cleaning and replacement paint and etc. I hope I gave you those tips. So I hope I did that right. Victor from Georgia, how do I advertise effectively? Just get it out there. Use Craigslist and postlets.com and then use amazing pictures, and start 60 days early. Those would be my 3 big things. Nanette from Colorado is asking, how do you achieve this when your tenants are causing damage to your property, which require repairs and additional maintenance? I've yet to be able to have a tenant move out one day and a new tenant move in the next day. You know what? I have had situations where it's just a lot of work and I've hustled. You just got to hustle. I know this is the horror stories of being a landlord, but I've had a few times where I'm at the property till 2 a.m. because I couldn't get a contractor and I'm doing it myself. I hate that. That's not the bright side, but it's one day out of the year, it's for that property, and it's the rest of it's gravy. I think that what I told Morgan earlier was that start early, start early. So you don't have to do all the repairs during the transition. You can certainly do them while the tenants are there. So if you keep up with it, you won't have a lot of issues. And you'd be amazed what just a coat of paint and a carpet cleaning will do. Okay, Joanne from Ohio is asking, how can I apply your system with 365 properties? It's the same. The system, Cozy, is the same thing. It works the same way for one property as it does for 365. So what I would suggest for anyone who's interested, I would try Cozy out. It's free, so just try it out with one house or one property or one unit, and try it out on either existing tenants that you have or new tenants. So if you try it out on existing tenants, you can just skip straight to the rent collection and get them hooked in. If you want to try it on new tenants, you can start from the beginning and start with an online application, and then screen them with reports, and then get them in the tenant screen or with rent collection. So start, whenever you're making a change in a business, you definitely want to start small. So try it out. If you like it, then you can try moving 2 or 3 or 4. And to be honest, you could either go all in when you decide you like it and move all your tenants from all 365 over and save yourself a lot of money, I bet. Or you could also just move them over while they're transitioning. So, usually tenants don't stay more than 1 or 2 years, maybe 3. So you can potentially have everything switched over within 2 to 3 years. That's a long time, but and you got to keep 2 systems at the time. But that's one method to do it too. Sometimes an existing tenant might be hesitant to changing their method. That's the only concern. Okay, so Jeff from Wisconsin is asking, do you hold an open house? I will be there from 4 to 5, or do you make individual appointments? Yeah, I never actually hold an open house. Like what I mentioned earlier about a landlord's open house, everything is done by appointment. It's just all back together, every 30 minutes. I never want to host an open house like a real estate sales open house, because to be honest, I don't want the liability of random people that I have not talked with or coordinated with previously just walking through the property. And I certainly want to be around the group as I kind of show them the house, because my tenants live there. They have boxes of cash sitting in their top, drawer. They have, valuables or jewelry or whatever. They have things around that could get stolen. So you definitely don't want people just walking. You definitely want to make appointments. Mary from New York is asking, currently we have 1 vacancy due to construction within for multiple upgrades. However, being in upstate New York, we find that wintertime is not an ideal time to find applicants, much less good finds for great tenants. Have you had this experience? Absolutely. It's not that you can't find good tenants, it's just there's less of them. I think there's less people looking to move in the wintertime in general. So when it's cold, when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, no one wants to run a moving truck. No one wants to carry a couch outside and slip on the ice. It's just, I would say, in my experience, it's a 1/10 of what you'll find in the springtime. So if you can help it, don't have a vacancy during the winter, especially in New York. Not always possible, but that's what I shoot for. So I always try to get my leases to end around June 1st. Jeremy from Washington is asking, how do I accurately price the property? What if your price seems too low and you have overwhelming interest? Well, overwhelming interest is not a bad thing because you have your selection of candidates. But I met somebody who had over 200 inquiries and only found one qualified applicant. So interest doesn't necessarily mean they're good, but if you have an overwhelming amount of interest, that means you've priced it too low. So you could just not respond to those people if you wanted to, and just say and just raise the price and see if you get more interest, and then talk to those people. Just because they're inquiring doesn't mean that you have to call them back, I should say. Now, if they apply, that's when discrimination issues come in, or you certainly don't want to get into issues where you're not calling back somebody because of their national origin or something like that. That's just horrible. So please don't misquote me there. I'm not saying that you should discriminate. I'm just saying that you can feel it out. So feel it out, and then hopefully you'll set that price accurately from then on forward. So what I've done in that situation, when I have gotten overwhelming interest, I will usually go back to those people and just say, hey, listen, thank you for inquiring, but we've raised the price. So if you'd still like to look at it, I'd love to have you come by. And that's it. And if they're interested, they're interested. If they're not, they're not. George from California says, renters who have descriptive little children have been brought to their attention and nothing's been done about it. Maybe you meant destructive little children. Renters who have destructive little children and have been brought to their attention have done nothing about it, and either other or just pacify me. Yes. So if you have tenants who have destructive children, just know that they're responsible for the damages of their children. So if they draw on the wall, they're going to have to pay to repaint it. It's just very simple. So I never take it personally when they just pacify the situation, or they just ignore me when I talk to them about it and I voice my concerns, because I know I've got a security deposit. Like, that's what that's for. So, oh well, yeah, I just won't be renewing to you, and we'll handle this when you move out. So that's it. All right, let's see if there's any more questions on the other system here. Okay. Everyone has been so wonderful. All right, so we have, yes, okay, a few more questions. Wow, okay, a lot more questions. Okay, guys, I know that it is well past the time that we said we were going to go, but thank you for your questions. I'll continue to do this. We just have about 5 or 6 more. So, do you prohibit tenants from moving out? This is from Marissa. Do you prohibit tenants from moving out during certain times of the year? Oh, yes, I answer that. Yes, I certainly do. I don't ever end my leases during the winter. And I will sometimes put that in the lease and say you're not allowed to terminate your lease during these times. Now, that's not going to stop them from abandoning the lease if they want to. If they just up and leave, you can't really force them to stay in your house, but you can certainly pursue them for any rent they might owe. How do I get an existing paper check into Cozy? Oh, existing paper checks that tenants, I'm sorry, I'm not answering this correctly. Robert is asking, I have tenants who pay with checks. How do I get them converted to Cozy? I converted 23 out of my 45, but the remaining are adamant that they don't want to switch to online rent payments. Robert, I feel you. I had a tenant, just one, I'm sorry, it's not a lot, but I had one tenant who was adamant about it too. So behavior, personal behavior is the hardest thing to change in the world. And especially if your lease says that they can pay with the check, then you have to let that happen. You can certainly give them the option to pay online, but if your lease allows them to pay with a check, then you can't change the lease until it's over. You can change it if it's renewal time or it's month to month, and then mandate they pay electronically. With that said, in some states like California, you have to allow another method besides electronic payments in addition to, but generally speaking, you can mandate just electronic payments. So what I do is, I'll just really push them, and I'll say it's really easy. Like it's a great way to do it. Like, you never have to worry about it. You never have to write a check, and I just promote all the benefits. Now, if you look in the handout section where there's all those downloads that you have, one of which is the guide that I mentioned earlier, but another one is the welcome letter, which actually highlights some of the benefits of online rent payment. So you could copy and paste those and try to push the idea with that. If it's not in the lease, you can just say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what we're moving towards, and this is what I'm going to put in the next lease or the next renewal. So if you don't want to agree to that, then you have to move. And you just have to weigh the benefit versus the risk in that situation. Sometimes you just got to wait till they leave and then start fresh. Novella is asking, I have one person in my group home that is nasty and junky. He leaves his clothes in the common area and socks in the fireplace screen, old food and dishes everywhere. I've talked to him multiple times, but he does not clean up behind himself. What can I do? I would suggest that hopefully you can do something if you had something in your lease. So in my lease, I do have a maintenance and cleaning clause that says you're responsible for doing X, Y, and Z, like take your trash out once a week. Don't leave any lots of food out with dirty dishes and all that stuff. You have to really be, have a good cleaning behavior so that you don't attract pests and all that. And then I also say, if you don't do this at my discretion, to my standards, then, and I do list what I expect, then I say I can hire a cleaning company at their expense. And I will pay for it, get it done. But then if they don't pay me back, I'll take it out of their deposit at the end. So if you don't have anything like that in your lease, you can't just arbitrarily, fine them. But you can, you can not renew. You can threaten to, if there's some sort of violation that he's doing, you certainly can try to terminate the lease due to the violation, or just not renew when it's time to renew. But, make sure you put it in your lease. That's why my lease is 13 pages. I know some tenants or landlords with 40-page leases. It's kind of extreme, but you definitely don't want a short one. Okay, so Jim is asking, do you require departing tenants to have their carpets professionally cleaned as part of the lease? Yep, absolutely. In my lease, I definitely mandate that before they leave, they have it professionally cleaned and that I see that receipt, that they prove it to me. So if they don't, then I'll just have it professionally cleaned and they have to pay for it. It doesn't matter what the carpet condition is like, even if it is normal wear and tear, they have to pay for it. Okay, great. Carrie, I'm glad you got a lot out of it. You said very informative, helpful webinar. Great job. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Jennifer is asking, will you make this webinar available to print? Yes. So go check in the handouts section in the control panel. There's actually the whole slide deck. This whole presentation is there. So you can just download it as a PDF and print it out. Okay, so thank you. That concludes the question and answer time. That ran over, and I appreciate almost everyone stayed with me through the whole presentation. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and I really appreciate it. This was fun. I hope you got a lot out of it, and feel free to email me if you have any further questions or just want to talk. I'd love to hear it if you sign up for Cozy. This webinar hopefully will be put on landlordology.com/replay in the next day or two. Thanks again. Have a great night.